our chapter 49. At 7 o'clock in the evening of the day following the one on which we have seen Mr. Greenwood conducting his multifarious schemes and transactions with the precision of a minister of state, Count Alteroni arrived at that gentleman's house in Spring Gardens. He was shown into the elegantly furnished drawing-room where Mr. Greenwood received him. The Count was, however, the only one of all the financier's visitors who did not seem dazzled by the proofs of wealth and luxury that prevailed around. The Italian nobleman remarked these indications of great riches and considered them the guarantees of Mr. Greenwood's prosperous position in the world, but, apart from this view of the splendor and sumptuousness of the mansion, he neither appeared astonished nor struck with admiration. The truth was that Mr. Greenwood's abode, with all its magnificent decorations and ornaments, its costly furniture, and its brilliant display of plate, was a mere hovel compared to the Count's own palace at Montoni, the capital city of Castelcicala. Mr. Greenwood and the Count had not exchanged many words ere dinner was announced. The banquet, although only provided for the founder of the feast and his one guest, was of a most magnificent description, every luxury which London could produce appearing upon the table. At 8:30 o'clock, the clerk of Mr. Greenwood's solicitor arrived and was introduced into the dining-room. He had brought with him a deed by which Greenwood bound himself to be answerable to Count Alteroni for the sum of £15,000, which the latter had placed in the hands of the former for the purpose of speculation in a certain steam packet company. Greenwood, recognizing his responsibility towards the Count to the above extent, whether the company should succeed or not, it having been originally agreed that he, Greenwood, should incur all risks, he had undertaken the sole direction of the enterprise. This deed was signed by George W. Greenwood, witnessed by the attorney's clerk, and handed to Count Alteroni. The clerk then withdrew. Mr. Greenwood ordered a bottle of the very best Burgundy to be opened, and drank a bumper to the health of Signora Isabella. Scarcely was this toast disposed of, when Lafleur entered the room and said, "A courier with dispatches from your correspondents in Paris, sir, has just arrived, and requests to see you instantly. I have shown him into the study." "Very good," exclaimed Mr. Greenwood, suddenly assuming a business air. Will you excuse me, Count, for a few minutes?" "I shall take my leave, since you are likely to be much occupied," said the nobleman. "On the contrary, pray remain. I insist upon it. I shall not be long with this messenger," cried Mr. Greenwood. "And we must empty another bottle before I allow you to take your departure." The Count suffered himself to be overruled, and Mr. Greenwood repaired to his study, well knowing that, instead of a courier from Paris, he should there find Tom, the cracksman. Nor was he mistaken. That individual was sitting very comfortably in an armchair, near the fire, gazing around him and wondering, amongst other things, where the master of the house kept his strong-box. So he's like, I could break into this place. This guy's probably got some money. "You are known, I believe," said Greenwood, carefully closing the door, "as the cracksman." "That's my title, sir, for want of a better," answered the villain. "You are perhaps astonished that I have sent for you here," continued Greenwood, "but I wish a certain service performed this very night, and for which I will pay you liberally." "What's the nature of the service?" demanded the cracksman, darting a keen and penetrating glance at Greenwood. "A highway robbery," coolly answered this individual. "Well, that's a plain one," said the cracksman, "but first tell me how you come to know of me, and where I was to be sent, because how can I tell but what this is all a plant of yours to get me into trouble?" "I will answer you candidly and fairly. A few years ago, when I first entered on a London life, I determined to make myself acquainted with all the ways of the metropolis, high or low, virtuous or vicious. I disguised myself on several occasions in very mean clothes, and visited all the flash houses and powder cribs, amongst others the boozing ken in Great Saffron Hill. There you were pointed out to me, and your skill, your audacity, and your extraordinary luck in eluding the police were vaunted by the landlord of that place in no measured terms." "Well, this is singular, blow me if it ain't," cried the cracksman. "Another person found me out just in the same way this very morning, and he wants a little private job done for him. But that's for tomorrow night. Howsomever, I never blab to no one of what I have done or am going to do for another. You tonight, him tomorrow night. After all, the landlord's a fool to talk so free. How did he know you wasn't a trap in disguise?" "Because I told him that my object was merely to see life in all its shapes. I was then so very young I could scarcely have been considered dangerous. However, I have occasionally indulged in such rambles, even very lately, and only a few weeks ago I looked in at the boozing ken dressed as a poor countryman. There I saw you again, and I overheard you say to a friend of yours, whom you called the Buffer, that you were generally there every evening to see what was going on." "All right," cried the cracksman. "Now what's the robbery and what's the reward? Are you man enough to do it alone?" I'm man enough to try it on, but if so be the chap is stronger than me. He is a tall, powerful person, and by no means likely to surrender without a desperate resistance. Well, all that can be arranged, said the crackman, coolly. Not knowing what you wanted with me, I brought 2 of my pals along with me, and they're out in the street or in the alley leading into the park. If there'd be anything wrong with on your part, they would either have rescued me or marked you and your house for future punishment. I'm glad that you have your companions so near. Of course they will assist you. In anything, said the cracksman. The Resurrection Man and the Buffer will stick to me like bricks. I had a feeling those were the 2 people who came with him. Very good. I will now explain to you what I want done. Between 11 and 12 o'clock, a gentleman will leave London for Richmond. He will be in his own cabriolet with a tiger, only 12 years old, behind. The cab is light blue, the wheels streaked with white. This is peculiar and cannot be mistaken. The horse is a tall bay with silver-mounted harness. This gentleman must be stopped, and everything his pockets contain, everything, mind, must be brought to me. Whatever money there may be about him shall be yours, and I will add 50 guineas to the amount. But all that you find about his person save the money must be handed over to me. It's got to be the Count, right? That they're going to accost and steal what he has, which means they'll steal back the paper of guarantee from him, which means he can't use it in court against Greenwood when he eventually defaults. That's got to be it, right? Okay, we'll see. I understand, said the cracksman. Does he carry pistols? I should imagine not. Never mind, the Resurrection Man has got a couple of barkers. But supposing he shouldn't come at all, what then? You shall have 20 guineas for your loss of time. Here are 10 as an earnest. That's business, said the cracksman. Any more instructions? No, I need scarcely say that no unnecessary violence is to be used. Leave all that to me. You will sit up and wait for me? Yes, said Mr. Greenwood. Give a low single knock at the door, and the same servant who sought you out last night and let you in just now will admit you again. The cracksman gave a significant nod and took his departure. Mr. Greenwood returned to the living room where he had left the Count. My news from Paris is of the most satisfactory nature, he observed. My correspondents in that city, moreover, promised me their best support in our new enterprise. I'm delighted to hear that your letters have pleased you, said the Count. The 2 gentlemen then broached another bottle of Burgundy, and Mr. Greenwood conversed with even more sprightliness than usual. Indeed, the Count fancied that he had never found his host so agreeable and entertaining. At 11 o'clock precisely, the Count's cabriolet was announced, and the nobleman took his departure, with the conviction that, under his present circumstances, Mr. Greenwood was the most eligible suitor for the hand of Isabella that was likely to present himself. As soon as the Count had taken his departure, Mr. Greenwood rang for his slippers and dressing-gown, drew close to the cheerful fire that burnt in the grate, and ordered Lafleur to make him a tumbler of the best pineapple rum punch. This exhilarating beverage and a fragrant Havana cigar enabled Mr. Greenwood to pass the time away in a most comfortable and soul-soothing manner. And it was thus that he mused as he watched the pale blue transparent smoke of his cigar wreathing upwards to the ceiling. I began the world without a shilling, and at an age when I had no experience in the devious ways of society, and what am I now? The possessor of 60,000 pounds. A few years ago I slept in coffee-houses, paying 8 pence a night for my bed. I breakfasted for 3 pence halfpenny, dined for 10 pence, and supped for 2 pence. Now the luxuries of 4 quarters of the world tempt my palate at every meal. At the outset of my career, my transactions were petty rogueries. Now I play my false cards to produce me thousands at a stake. I once purchased my own coat for 12 shillings in Holywell Street. There is not now a tailor at the West End who will not give credit to George Greenwood. My wealth purchases me every kind of pleasure. I can afford to bestow 1,000 guineas upon the woman who, daughter of a peer and wife of a baronet, throws herself into my arms. One single scheme produces me 10 times that amount. And Isabella, beauteous Isabella, shall be my wife. I shall receive no dowry with her, it is true, because I have obtained all her father's fortune in advance. But I shall be proud to introduce a lovely wife, the daughter of a count, and descended from a long line of ancestry in that fashionable sphere to which I must henceforth belong. I shall be a member of Parliament. Lord Tremorden can easily obtain for use a baronetcy in due time, and then the peerage is not a height too difficult to aspire to. Oh, if with a coronet upon my brow and Isabella by my side I can drive in my chariot to... Lafleur entered the room at this moment and handed a letter to his master. Greenwood opened it and read as follows. I have done your bidding in every particular up to the present moment. Louisa set off this afternoon for Birmingham, having received a letter stating that her only sister is at the point of death in that town. You will, of course, understand by whom that letter was written. I have, moreover, invented an excuse relative to the date of the departure of the New York packets from Liverpool, by which means I am enabled to remain in London, without exciting the suspicions of Eliza. I shall pass tomorrow evening with her. You may rely upon being admitted at midnight. It's all right, because he has his scheme against Eliza. Man, I hope she has another knife or something, and they don't actually drug her. Greenwood full well understood the meaning of this note without a signature, and its contents tended to augment that happiness which the success of his schemes infused into his breast. Hour after hour passed away. At length midnight sounded, and all the servants save Lafleur were dismissed to their sleeping apartments. The cigars, the rum punch, and the pleasurable reflections into which the financier plunged made the time elapse rapidly. 1 o'clock struck, and as he had not found a single moment tedious, he was not anxious, nor a prey to suspense as other men would have been. He felt certain that his wishes would be accomplished, and he was therefore as composed as if he had already been assured of their success. The clock struck 2, and a low knock was heard at the front door. Lafleur answered the summons, and in a few moments introduced the cracksman to the room where his master was sitting. Okay, we'll see how things went. All right, sir, said that worthy the moment Lafleur had withdrawn. And no violence, I hope, cried Greenwood. Not a bit, returned the cracksman. We was as gentle as lambs. We only pitched the small boy into a dry ditch that was by the side of the road, and as for the gentleman, I just tapped him over the head with the butt of a pistol to keep him quiet, but I did it myself to make sure it wasn't done too hard. And surely, you have surely not murdered him, said Greenwood, his whole countenance suddenly convulsed with horror. Don't be afraid, he was only stunned. You may take my word for that, returned the cracksman coolly. But here's all the paper we found in his pocket, and as for his purse, it had but a few pounds in it. Mr. Greenwood received the papers from the hands of the cracksman, and observed with a glance that amongst them was the document which he had given a few hours previously to guarantee the safety of the £15,000 placed in his hands by Count Alteroni. See if that's what he was after. Ah, you are sure, he said with some uneasiness depicted upon his countenance, that there is no danger to be apprehended from the blow? Danger? Cried the cracksman. I know from experience exactly what kind of blow will stun or break a limb or kill outright. I'll forfeit my reputation if there's any harm in that there whack which I gave tonight. We must hope that you are right in your conjecture, said Greenwood. Then taking his purse from his pocket, he counted down 42 sovereigns upon the table, adding, that will make up the 50 guineas promised. The cracksman consigned the money to his fob, then took leave of his employer, hoping that he should have his custom in the future. Knowing Greenwood? Probably. The moment he was gone, Greenwood thrust the document, which he had thus got back by a crime of an infamous nature, into the fire. When it was completely consumed, he proceeded to examine the other papers. These consisted chiefly of letters written in cipher, addressed to Count Alteroni and bearing the postmark of Montoni. The rest were notes and memoranda of no consequence whatsoever. Mr. Greenwood, being unable to unriddle the letters written in cipher, and considering that they were upon political subjects with which he had little or no interest, consigned the entire packet of papers to the flames. He then retired to rest, and slept as soundly as if his entire day had been passed in virtuous deeds. At about 10 o'clock in the morning he received the following letter from Richmond. My dear Mr. Greenwood, as I was on my way home last evening, I was suddenly attacked by 3 villains in a dark and lonely part of the road. One of the miscreants stunned me with the blow of a pistol and threw the little jockey into a ditch. Fortunately, we are neither of us seriously injured. The robbers plundered me of everything I had about my person, my purse containing 34 sovereigns, and all my papers, amongst which was the security I had received from your hands a few hours before. You will perhaps have another drawn. I do not think it is worthwhile to make any disturbance relative to the matter, as, in consequence of the darkness of the night, I should be totally unable to recognize the miscreants. Yours faithfully, Alteroni. Thank heavens there is no danger in that quarter, exclaimed Greenwood, when he had perused this letter. He is not hurt, and he will not adopt any means to detect the culprits. As for having another document drawn up, I can take my time about that, and he will not dare press me for it as he did for the first. Besides, he will consider my honorable intentions in the matter fully proved by having given the one which he has lost. Thus have I obtained £15,000 without much trouble. Thus have I thrown dust into the eyes of this count, and still do I retain his confidence, and his lovely daughter, the beautiful Isabella, with her large black eyes, her raven hair, her sweet lips, and her sylph-like form, she shall be mine. I shall lead her to the altar, that charming Italian, whose very looks are heaven. Everything progresses well. Success attends all my plans, and tonight, he added, tonight will ensure me the gratification of my desires and my vengeance with regard to that haughty one of the villa. At this point, don't you picture like an evil laugh? Oh, man, someone's got to give Greenwood what's coming to him. Okay, we'll see what happens in the next chapter.